Hello. How's everybody? Thank you for spending your lunch hour with us. I know it's an incredibly busy time of year, and we so appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to learn more about the Ralph C. Wilson Jr. Foundation funds here at the Community Foundation for Greater Buffalo. I'm going to stand in front of the pole. I go back and forth, and so we kind of fun. My name is Bridget Doherty. I'm a consultant working for the Community Foundation and managing the Wilson Endowed Fund grant process. Before we go around the room, I'm going to ask you all to introduce yourselves and tell us what organization you're representing here today. Few logistics, there are bathrooms, they're outside the office and down the hallway. We've got some water and some snacks in the back. If you haven't signed in, I think everyone has, please do so. We want to make sure we have your email address. And finally, this is being taped. This is the second of 4 sessions. It will be available on the website. The first 15, 20 minutes are the same for each session. We didn't want people who are interested in youth sports to have to listen to 20 minutes of questions on caregiving. Want to be respectful of your time, but if you're coming to multiple sessions and you don't want to stay, they will be available online. So with that, I'd like to ask the other members of the Community Foundation staff to introduce themselves, and then we'll go around the room.
Great, so I'm Betsy Constantine. I'm a Vice President here at the Community Foundation, and I'm the Relationship Manager with the Wilson Foundation.
I'm Andrew Gardy. I'm a Director of Client Relations here at the Community Foundation.
Jean.
Jean, introduce yourself. Hello, Jean McEwen from the Community Foundation.
Great, thank you. We'll start over here.
Sure. I'm Cindy Kincaid. I work for Visit Buffalo Niagara, but I'm here representing the Buffalo Green Fund.
Great.
I'm the chair.
Alma Brown, I'm with CBCA. I have a number of clients that might be interested in that.
Great.
I'm Paul Maurer. I'm primarily here to represent the World Weather Center, but I'm involved in other boards that are here as well.
Great.
Bill Even, Chester Ridge Conservancy.
Excellent.
Holly Murata, University of Buffalo.
David Latempio, People Incorporated.
Kelly Ulrich with the Diocese of Buffalo.
Betsy Sullivan, representing the Diocese of Buffalo.
Rick Sukan, Foundation of the Roman Catholic Diocese of Buffalo.
Great.
Paul Marzello, Buffalo Erie County Naval and Military Park.
Jim Seraphin, Central Thermal Restoration Corporation.
Oh, me? Yes. Susan Herrnstein, Open Space Institute.
Lauren Penman, Open Space Institute.
Tricia Fenari, Roycroft Campus.
Anthony Battaglia, Buffalo Philharmonic Chorus.
Maureen Stockdale, Ribbon Adult Services. Karen Stanley Fleming, Michigan Street African American Heritage Court.
Carl Johnson, African American Culture Center.
Gary Rouleau, Riviera Theater, and also a board member on the Hull House Foundation.
Deborah Storing with the Hull House.
Gary Costello, Historic Hull House, oldest surviving stone dwelling in Erie County.
Good job. Nice.
Good afternoon, Joyce Stolten from Buffalo Center for Arts and Technology.
Great.
In the back row there.
Hi, and I'm Stephanie Smith, and I'm here on behalf of Buffalo Stringwork. Great. We got everyone? Nope. Oh, sorry. Allison Marner, Buffalo Philharmonic Orchestra. Awesome. Awesome. So thank you again. We really appreciate it. So what we're going to do is we've got about 45, 50 minutes here. I'll spend a few minutes telling you about the history of the Ralph C. Wilson Jr. Field of Interest Fund here at Community Foundation. Next, we'll talk about objectives and other grant requirements specific to community assets. Field of Interest Fund, we'll talk about timelines, some basics around the LOI and decision criteria, and we'll certainly leave 20 plus minutes for your questions. The Ralph C. Wilson Jr. Foundation established endowed funds here at the Community Foundation for Greater Buffalo to provide a permanent source of funding and support for initiatives that reflect the personal passions of Mr. Wilson. Endowment funds are designed to grow over time, and in order to ensure they are perpetual, the principal of the funds is not distributed. So each year, a portion of the earnings of these funds will be distributed. And so that's the intent, right? Never to touch the principal, and to every year in perpetuity have a similar grant cycle, which is what we're opening up January 3rd. 2016 was the first year of the distribution of these funds. This year, the funds, we will be distributing about $800,000 from the 4 funds in total. And we are distributing about $150,000 out of the Community Assets Fund. Grants made from the Field of Interest funds here held at the Community Foundation are distinct from the grants made from the Ralph C. Wilson Jr. Foundation directly. I know there's been some confusion and will continue to probably be. In most cases, the grants made from these funds held at the Community Foundation serve to support very localized projects across the Western New York region, for which a smaller grant can make all the difference. And in some cases, it may provide an opportunity to test out ideas, new ideas and programs on a smaller pilot level. All organizations and agencies can apply to the Field of Interest Fund, even if you have an outstanding grant with the Community Foundation through their competitive grant cycle, or if you received received a grant from last year's endowed funds here at the Ralph C. Wilson Foundation. What I'm going to do is run through quickly just the goals of the 4 funds to give you a sense of scope, and then spend the most of our time. I'm going to hand it off to Jean, who will spend some time talking specifically about community assets. So caregiving, the goal of that fund is to improve support for caregivers, whether paid or voluntary, through efforts that provide needed skills, resources, education, and respite. Caregivers are those who look after dependent individuals, such as children with special needs, disabled adults, or older adults who require caregiving. Projects supported through this fund should have a direct impact on the caregiver. Community assets. This fund will support significant cultural and historic assets and increase access to long-term art instruction for youth. Design and access. This will be the inaugural year of distribution for design and access. This fund has 2 goals. One is to increase the health and quality of life of Western New York residents of all ages by enhancing outdoor activities within the region. And this fund will give preference to projects that incorporate green design and universal access design. And finally, youth sports. The goal of youth sports is to increase access and affordability of all forms of physical activity for youth through organized or casual play with the aim of expressing or improving physical fitness and mental well-being. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Jean to give you some more specifics around community assets.
For anyone who just is coming in, could you please sign in for us so we know who's here? So community assets, so Bridget talked about the goal, and these are specific objectives. So you'll see that there's more detail here related to the ball. So there's more detail here related to the objectives. So with regard to increasing access to long-term arts instruction, this is for children and youth living in under-resourced communities. And what I want to stress here is the word long-term. So we're not talking about one-time exposure, a field trip. We're talking about a longer-term engagement. And we'll talk a little bit more as we go through the presentation about what we're looking for in terms of depth, frequency, numbers served. And then restoring and leverage significant historic buildings and architectural landmarks. What is key here is the verbiage about preference for sites that promote cultural tourism. So that is a preference, it's not a mandate. We've had a high level of interest in our first year last year, and I'm anticipating another high level of interest. Given the number of folks we have here today, this is we have the highest number of people at this session. So just so you know, there will again be another high level of interest. So this additional criteria, this is a one-time grant. We are not going to be looking at multi-year. So this is for one time. We're anticipating that it would be a 12-month, but it could be something shorter, but most likely a one-time 12-month grant. The range you see here is $10,000 to $25,000, and you already saw on the slide that was presented previously the total amount of funding. So keeping that in mind, you know, if everyone asks for $25,000, we have limited numbers of folks that we can support. So This is Erie County only. We've been getting a lot of calls. This is the same as it has been last year. It is the same this year. We have no idea of what might happen in the future. So right now, this is for Erie County. And again, there's been a high level of interest. So if it were to open up to Western New York, it would just, the competition would just increase. And you have to be a 501c3 nonprofit organization or have somebody serving as the 501c3 organization as passed through. So we'll be looking for that. And we are open to receiving requests for either capital or programming. So there's no limitation on the type of funding that you can request. Oops. Okay, so details on the timeline. So this is moving, we've accelerated the timeline this year. So any of you who applied last year, you'll see that we've accelerated the timeline. The process opens up January 3rd. It is completely electronic, and all the letters of intent will be submitted online, due by January 20th at 4 p.m. The Foundant, which is our electronic process, will shut down at 4 p.m. So if you're trying to get in at 5 and submit, it's not going to accept it. So it's all set up electronically. So please pay attention to the date and the timing. And then February 15th, we intend to notify organizations that we will be inviting for a full application. Last year, we had, I think, I looked and we had over 40 submissions for letters of intent. We invited 8 and supported 6. So that, fewer will be invited. And then recipients will be, the deadline for the full application will be March 15th. And in May, we intend to notify recipients who are being awarded grants to support whatever programming and projects you are looking to have a support. Beginning May 31st, grants will be dispersed. And for projects that begin and end during that time period, so that's June 1, 2017 to May 31, 2018. So you're not going to hear about whether or not you're receiving funding until May, so you shouldn't be telling us that your project is starting in March, because we are not going to support expenses that have already incurred. The intention is that we're supporting expenses going forward. And oftentimes people will send us requests and say they're starting in March, and when we look at that, we say, well, then they must be prepared to go ahead without our support, because they won't know about ours until whatever the timing is. In this case, it's May. And 1 year after the project completion, the grant reports will be due, and again, everything is electronic. So you'll be submitting everything, uploading it online. That way we have an opportunity to be able to track the outcomes, and we have some historic perspective on what the funds are supporting. So again, we're starting with that letter of intent, and organizations are limited to only one within each of the 4 categories that Bridget spoke of. So for community assets, you can only submit one. You can submit one to design and access and caregiving if you have, depending on what you're doing, but for community assets, only one. Otherwise, you're competing against yourself. We need to hear from you. What is the most important project, program, priority for your organization that you are bringing forward for us to consider? If you submit 2, you're leaving it up to us to determine what would be the one that we would want to fund. So just one per organization, and you're encouraged to apply for that project of highest priority, as I said, because we're looking to support what your organization as a whole has identified as not just one individual, not just the executive director or one board member. Our intention is that you have discussed this at your home bases, and that you've come to the conclusion that whatever this one proposal, one concept, because you're submitting a concept for the letter of intent, not yet the proposal, is the one that is of highest priority. And this is the website where all of the letters of intent must be submitted through Foundant, which is our electronic process. And you have to create an account if you're new to our process. Many of you I know and recognize, and many of the organizations will already be in the system. And we don't want to be having multiple accounts created, so if there's any question, you should give a call to Darren, who I'm sure many of you are familiar with, and we can check to see if there's already an account, because sometimes people have different email addresses. It's the same name, but like your Gmail account and your organization account. So we don't want to be having multiple, because then it's harder for us to be tracking against the profiles. And your work saves automatically, so, you know, that's good. And you have to pay attention to the character count, because you're limited in each of the items how many characters can be submitted. So what you're presenting to us is your concept, and basically, based from that information, we are going to identify whether or not that concept is something that we feel we can advance to full application. So you might be wondering, what are the questions that are included on the letter of intent, and they are listed here. So we're looking for the name of the program, obviously. The amount requested, remember, it's $10,000 to $25,000. We're not doing multi-year. Which fields of interest fund your grant addresses? Normally we have boxes, and I think it's probably set up that way, and you just check off. So for all of you who are here, you would be checking off community assets. A description of your organization, a one-sentence summary of your request, and then the program description, I think, is maybe like 1,000 characters or something, you know, a paragraph or two. And the target audience. This is imperative that we know the number of individuals who are going to be served. So we want you to tell us who and how. And we're looking for a number. We're looking for you to tell us. So if it's something that has visitorship, we're looking for you to tell us how many annual visitors do you have. And I was speaking to someone on the phone this morning who wasn't able to come. And I'm like, well, we're a trail, and we don't know who's coming because we're open from dawn till dusk. But you have to come up with some reasonable figure, and it can't be like, well, everyone in Erie County might come. You can't, you know, I mean. So please use your good judgment there. The goals and objectives, so we're looking for short and long term. So the short term would be what you are going to engage in, start and complete in this 12-month period from the time you hear from us in May to the following June. And then longer term objectives, we are interested to know how does this, what we are looking at, how does this fit into the longer term, the full picture, the longer term objectives and outcomes related to whatever it is you're asking us for. Because we know that $10,000 or $25,000 is just something very small that fits into a much larger puzzle of different pieces that are all involved in the work that you're doing. And we want frequency and duration and other measures when applicable. So, for instance, in the long-term after-school arts instruction for youth, we want to know, is it a 12-month period? Is it just in the summer? Is it in the school year? Are they coming once a week? Are they coming 3 times a week for an hour? Whatever. So we're looking for that kind of detail to help us determine the cost benefit, because basically we're going to take the amount you're requesting and look at the number of people you're serving and look to see what that looks like. So, you know, and it doesn't mean that if it's 1,000 per person, it's not something that we would consider, but it's something that we will be looking at and when we're making our determination. And then we're interested in the how you're advancing the field of interest fund objectives. So circling back to the objectives that we talked about, I think they're like on page, we just want to, is there another slide? No. Let's just go back to that, because I think it's important that we understand that the objective is, the first is to increase access to long-term arts instruction for children and youth living in under-resourced communities. And the second is that restore and leverage significant historic buildings and architectural landmarks. And then again, as I had stated, that preference for promoting cultural tourism. So that's what we're looking for here. We're looking for you to revisit these and tell us in your response to that item how this grant will advance those objectives. And we want you to speak to that specifically. And the assumption is that you will be submitting for one or the other, and not both, but some of you may be providing services in a building that are architecturally significant and providing long-term after-school art instruction. I don't know. That is a possibility, but for most of you, I think it'll be one or the other. And I would say don't try to dilute, don't try to make something that's not there. So don't try to make it like if you are in an architectural building, but really the mission of your organization is to provide the long-term after-school arts instruction for youth. Focus on that, because you're limited in the number of characters, and we want to be sure that we're hearing from you specifically, you know, what is the justification that we would want to advance this to a full application. So, let's see. We review grants in accordance with the identified goals and objectives, which we just revisited for each field of interest fund, and the eligibility requirements. Everything is online. I think everybody, we sent out to like 12 or 1,300 people the notice about today, and so that's how you found out what's happening here, and you can look for more detail. And this is some of the decision criteria. So we already talked about the need and what will be served. The project readiness, that's key. We need to know that you're ready. And again, we're not reimbursing for something that's already happened. We're looking to support you for something that is ready to be implemented and roll out. So we're looking for the readiness related to your request. The impact and outcomes and how they'll be measured, I think we already talked about that. We're looking for specific measures. So not just, we're going to increase grades for the students who come to our after-school arts instruction. We're going to increase them by 10%. You know, how many, it's not just we're going to increase them for those who are participating. We need to know if there's 70 students participating, 50 of them are going to have their grades increased by 10%. That is the detail that we're looking for, because otherwise we can't, we're not getting the full picture, and then there's no way for us to be able to measure, and then you'll be using that and flesh it out in more detail if you're invited for the full application. Sustainability, that's always a tough one. We know for nonprofits that it's an ongoing struggle, but we're going to be looking, sometimes it's a one-time expense, sometimes organizations have a stream of revenue that will be generated. And obviously that's the best case scenario, but just trying to answer for us what the sustainability looks like. But we do understand that organizations are constantly looking for funding. And in that full application, if you get there, we're going to be looking to see who else is supporting you, because again, 10 or 25,000 is probably a smaller piece of a larger project. And the ability of the organization to learn. So we're all about being a learning organization, and we think it's always good to have continuous learning, and we'll be looking to see, you know, how your organization is advancing that. And then questions, so contact information. So I'm specifically going to be your contact for community assets. If you have questions for youth sports, design and access, or caregivers, Bridget's your go-to for the youth sports and caregiving, and Kara, who's going to be doing our last session of the day, Kara Matilliano, will be for design and access. For general information, you can reach out to Laura. Laura, why don't you stand up, because Laura's been coordinating a lot of the process, and I think many of you have probably emailed her, and she's emailed you. Laura is like our central point of contact. So many of you have probably interacted with her and will again as we go through the process, and we want to thank Laura for helping us keep this all together. There's a lot of moving parts with 4 different processes at the same time. Betsy, did you want to say something?
One clarification I wanted to add, Jean. So for this process, it's 501c3 only, so we're not doing pass-through 501c3.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I just wanted to clarify that.
No, do we have that on?
We do. It's in the guidelines. Yep.
Thank you. Yeah.
Gary Rillo, Riviera Theater. Erie County is the only, obviously we're in Niagara County, so we're not eligible. Is there an opportunity in the future for Niagara County organizations?
We don't know that right now. It is Erie County. It was last year. It is this year. That's entirely up to the Ralph C. Wilson Junior Foundation. That is not up to us to determine. And again, we have this high level of interest, so if we open it up to Western New York, the competition just gets greater. But right now it's Erie, and we don't know anything other than that at this point.
Okay.
Question?
Yeah, I had a question regarding the last question about organization and learning. It seems that could be answered in a couple different ways. I was looking for some advice because I know, like in my organization, in People Inc., we have some re-engagement at an administrative level where people are retrained in services, or you could look at it as you are learning about you're engaging your constituents, and you're learning about their interests. So I was just curious if you could
I think we
expound.
would be interested in both. Bridget, do you have,
Yeah,
I think we're interested in as much information as you can provide in the limited space.
He's required.
that you're given.
Yeah.
Right, but if you post something and we want more information, we're going to circle back with you and reach out.
Yeah,
Bridget.
and that question is actually in the full application. We asked you to tell us about a learning experience that you had. And so I think if you're applying, for example, for long-term arts program for youth, it would probably be in that program. So last year we did this, but we saw this cool program in Portland, and so we incorporated this into our program. So I think it's more along those lines. They certainly could be at an organizational level, at a program level, et cetera.
And part of it also, as Bridget said at the beginning, because the intent of this money is to support, so the size of this grant, $10,000 to $25,000, the objective is that it's meaningful, that it's a meaningful amount to whatever it is that you're doing, and it does give an opportunity also to try some things out. So we would want to understand that sometimes we try and fail things, right? And so that's a part of adding that question in there, is understanding where there may have been that trying and failing and learning through part of that.
And the trustees at Wilson Foundation have final approval on the grants here, and this work here will help inform their decision-making as well. So it's part of a larger learning process for us at the Community Foundation, but also I think in the broader context of the work that Wilson is doing in Western New York.
Yep. But it will only be if you're advanced to the full application, not on the letter of intent. That's the clarifier there. Is that correct?
On what?
Answering that, giving us detail related to that.
Yes, it's around the learning organizations at the full application level, yes.
Would feasibility studies be fundable by the Ralph Wilson Foundation?
It's not restricted. We're pretty open to, I mean, we say capital and programming, and we know that oftentimes you need a feasibility study before you can move to one of those, so we are not limiting ourselves. So, yes, you could apply for the NFSD number.
For the two objectives, I was just wondering, are there sort of two separate pots, or is it?
No, it's one pool of money with the two objectives within, and depending on what we receive and, you know, how things play out. Well, and last year we didn't have long-term after-school art construction for youth. We only had the piece related to the, can we just go back and put that back up there? We only had the second objective. So this year we have additional funds, but we have two objectives. So we don't really know how it's going to play out.
To the gentleman's point from Riviera Theater about geography, so is it the 501c3 that has to be located in Erie County, or the recipient of the program that has to be in Erie County?
For which? For the long-term after-school art construction, we want...
For any of the programs. But
no, this is the only one that's restricted by the county. The rest are Western New York.
It's the services provided are in Erie County.
Okay.
People can come from anywhere to receive the services, but the services have to be provided in Erie County.
Thank you.
And we don't think that we'll be having people travel, like we're not going to take students traveling from one county to another for a one-time event, because if it's long-term after-school art construction for youth, we assume they're going to be here in the county and receiving that support here.
Is the same group of individuals evaluating all four of your fields of interest, or is it a different committee that's evaluating the grants for each area?
we're all sharing the review process amongst the 4 that were listed there. So a similar group of people, but we could have other staff members involved. And again, as Bridget or Betsy said, I don't remember, the ultimate decision is that of the Ralph C. Wilson Jr. Foundation. We are helping to administer the process, gather the information. They will be making the ultimate decision, but there will be a group of us here all working together to gather all that information for them.
We've been looking at considering the application to the Wilson Foundation directly, and one of my key questions is just really back to what's appropriate in the scale. Are you available to give any advice on that?
On larger, asked directly to them?
No, whether the project is appropriate for this level or not. I mean, certainly sensitive of not wasting anybody's time and our resources, and I think this is probably a good fit for what we're thinking, but...
So if what you're saying is you want to ask for $25,000, but you have like $1 million capital campaign, is it worth coming to us? Is that where you're...
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, so if I were reviewing that, I would be looking to see how far along you are in the process, because we're looking to have the funds expended, and so project readiness. So we're not looking to have that $25,000 sit for 2 years while the remaining funds are gathered. So I don't know. I mean, unless you want to give me a
You've
specific...
answered some already. So
okay.
that's good.
But you're here for questions.
Yeah,
you're here for
that's
questions.
fine.
Absolutely. Today and then by email.
Okay.
Right.
So it's appropriate to follow up with maybe a little more specific scenario afterwards? Or?
Yes, but I will not be able to say, yes, that sounds like something to be funded, because we don't know what's coming to us because it's an open process. I would also say you can look to see what was funded last year. There were 6 organizations funded. That will give you at least some sense, not with the long-term after-school art construction, because this is our first time out, but with the other objective of restore and leverage significant historic buildings. Yeah.
Yes, it is.
It was being posted, so
It is
it's
posted.
up. So
Yep.
that's the answer to that question. Yeah.
And I know it's subjective too, but I would just draw your attention to, we really want the $10,000 to $25,000 to make an impact, and so whether or not that's piloting something new, or, and I think that's a relative term. Everyone's, what impact is, to Jane's point, is $25,000 or $1 million is impact of a larger campaign. But I would be thoughtful about that as sort of you're iterating back and forth on whether or not to apply directly to the Ralph C. Wilson Foundation or here. My expectation is that it would be, you wouldn't apply for the same exact project to both because of the size differential. And so that's what I would, the same organization may likely apply to both, but probably for different projects or different types of opportunities.
And our understanding is that there's a high level of interest there as well. So there is, the competition is, we know that there are, we have a lot of needs and a lot of organizations looking to provide services. Other questions?
Is there any preference for Bill's season ticket holders? Like in the past?
Unfortunately, no.
Only if you invite me.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Yeah.
It's been such a great year. Yeah, but we, our fan base. Other questions?
If it's a capital ask and it's a larger multi-phase program, the 25 would make a difference on one part of that?
Right, so I would speak to so obviously if it's phased and the 25,000 can help you to get to this phase, that would be something where, as Bridget said, we're looking for the impact. So we're looking to see what the impact can be in this phase. So that would be, you would be speaking to that in your short term, and then the long term would be, and this is part of an overall, much larger scale.
So this is bricks and mortar, that's second criteria.
Yes.
I mean, that's how it reads, that's how it reads. Yeah. That was my question. It's quite different from the first one.
If you look at what we funded last year, though, we funded an exhibit at the Albright Knox Art Gallery. So that was not so similar. That's leveraging. So that was leveraging of like thousands and thousands of people who were coming, and the preference for promoting cultural tourism within a significant historic building. So it does not have to be bricks and mortar. Other questions, thoughts? Okay, well, if something comes up, you can email Laura, or you can email me directly. Laura's probably around her email more than I am, but I will certainly get back to you within a day or two, would be my intention. We know this process is going to be fast-moving, so be sure that you mark the date and be sure that your meetings at the timeline related to the commission. And
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming.